Let's go to Eric Cantor, who's a congressman from Virginia, the majority leader of the House, in fact, who is in town this weekend. Congressman, welcome to San Diego.
Mike's good to be on. Good to be with you.
Now, you're here to talk with Qualcomm about business friendliness here in America. We've talked about this in the last few weeks from so many different angles. But if you could pick one hurdle to success that's been placed by the government, that's in the way of so many producers in America, something that we need to get rid of. If you could pick one hurdle, what would it be?
I'd have to say, Mike, that it's about our tax laws. And it's just wrong to require American businesses to be expected to operate at rates that are at least 50% higher than our competitors. And I would have to say that if we're going to be about growth again in this country, if we're going to represent to the world what Qualcomm and others represent to industry, and that is growth, opportunity, innovation, ingenuity, we better get back in the game and get our tax laws straight. And then with that, certainly on the regulatory front, we are doing more than just tying the hands of our American-based businesses behind their backs when they try and compete.
We'll talk about the corporate income tax. It's 35% in America plus 8.8% here in California. So we're talking a 44% tax on businesses here in California. Just Friday or Thursday, we talked with Congressman Bob Filner about the corporate income tax. What do you want to lower it to? What do you think is the best place to put it? I think the Ryan budget puts it at 25% federal, right?
Right, and we've got a Ways and Means Committee back in Washington working on an overall tax reform package, and the centerpiece of it is how do we focus on creating jobs and growth in our economy, and that is to reduce corporate tax rates to 25%, again, so that our companies here in America can begin to compete better globally. We've got to face facts. We are in a global economy. Other countries are looking at upward mobility and opportunity in expanding nations around the world. If we want our American-based companies to function and compete, we have got to lower our tax rate.
How do you counter the argument from the left that if we lower our tax rates here, then the government's going to be bringing in less revenue? We can't afford the tax decrease. How do you counter that?
Well, I counter that to say, how can we expect our small businesses and corporations to pay more taxes? I mean, the money comes from either the taxpayers, the hardworking people of this country, or the federal government has to borrow money on the debt markets. And we know where we are as far as debt is concerned in this country. So let's get the conversation back to growth. How do we make it so that people will decide to allocate their capital and to create jobs? That's why we need a lower tax rate. The government has been proven over time the government will actually experience an uptick in revenues if we've got a booming economy. How do you get a booming economy? You get entrepreneurs and businesses to go about investing again, put their capital at risk, and create jobs.
I think there's I like to rank the taxes by immorality and just how business stupid they are. And I think the biggest one is corporate income tax, but also the capital gains tax. Any plan on that in the Ryan budget, and really looking beyond the Ryan budget as hopefully we continue to grow the majority in the House and get one in the Senate.
Right, and look, we're going. The Ryan budget that passed last week is our blueprint for the future. And as you suggest, the Senate's not going to pass that budget. So we're about trying to make sure we get the bills, the proposed legislation out of our committees onto the floor, so that we can meet somewhere with the Senate that hopefully we can reduce all these rates. Now, the capital gains rate and tax is particularly, I think, corrosive as far as entrepreneurs are concerned. Because, what sets us apart as America, and you talked about in your opening the fact that America is the greatest society in all of human history, and I think all of us, at least most, agree with that. And what has set us apart is the fact that people want to come to this country because they've got an opportunity to make something of themselves. They don't rely on the government to do it for them. Capital gains tax rate has a lot to do with the incentive or lack thereof for people to put what they've earned to risk and to put it to work. That's why the capital gains tax rate is so damaging to our growth. If we are going to allow that rate to go back up.
And this may be a complicated question because there's a lot going on here, but what is it now and what is it in the Ryan budget and what would you like to ultimately see it be?
Well, I mean, ultimately, we've got to, in the Bush tax rates, they're at 15%, And, there's some that want to raise it back up to where the ordinary income tax rate is and have no distinction between tax capital gains and ordinary income rates.
So 39%? Some people want to make it 39%?
Oh, absolutely. Some people don't think that there should be any distinction. But again, that is what makes us who we are in this country. You can make it here and make it on your own better and more likely than anywhere else. But things are getting competitive out there, which is why it's so important if you ask a question about what is the one thing we could do. We could lower tax rates. And again, we've got to start with corporate tax rate because right now that is what's so out of kilter.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe 2 weeks ago or so, we talked with the CEO of Carl's Jr., CKE, Carl's Jr. and Hardee's, probably in your neck of the woods, about business friendliness here in California. He's already moved a lot of restaurants, or is not growing anything here in California. He's growing in Texas instead for all the reasons that you just talked about. I want to get your comment on this quote here from him.
This is about trying to make it so businesses can survive and prosper in this state. People are suffering because they don't have jobs. They're not sure of their futures. They're not sure of their children's futures. We can change that. American businessmen, California businessmen, and entrepreneurs can change that. But to do it, we don't need to be subsidized. We don't need to be regulated. We don't need to be stimulated. We need to be left alone. And if you leave us alone, we can fix the problems. And if people in government would understand that and step back a little, I think we'd see this state take off and be the golden state once again.
So, Congressman, is your party moving forward with the idea that in order to encourage growth and investment and a stronger business friendliness and growth in America, that you're going to do less government as opposed to the people on the left who want to do more things to encourage investment?
Well, there's no question that we need to pull government back from being so intrusive in so many aspects of our economy and our lives. No question about it. Now, the left would love to say that we're about no regulation, and what I would say is we're about smart regulation. We're about striking the balance between the public sector and the private sector. And, I'm from Virginia, and you know that our concept of limited government began in the architecture of our Constitution by James Madison and was the primary author of that document. Others, such as Thomas Jefferson and Patrick Henry, George Washington, the founders of our country, believed the power comes from the individual, not from government. So when the CEO of Carl's, or in my neck of the woods, Hardee's, talks about the fact we got to let government step back a bit because people, entrepreneurs, businesses know how to grow, I couldn't have said it any better.
It's the only reason we need these intrusive taxes to begin with is because the government has gotten so big. It was Filner the other day who said, we go after the corporations because that's where the money is. They shouldn't need the money. We should have such a limited government that they shouldn't even need to be looking for places to steal from us.
And look what he's saying. Look what he's saying too. You know, the businesses are really nothing but the shareholders, the people that work there, the boards of directors, the officers. That money it doesn't belong to the government. It belongs to those people. It belongs to the shareholders of those businesses. So again, what government has got to prove is that it has a better way to spend that money than to leave it in the hands of those who earn it. And we've gotten so far from that in Washington that that's really what the fight is about. The fight that I think most of your listeners have been hearing about and reading about over the last several weeks and months in Washington is really a struggle about who we are as a country. You know, are we going to be that country in which the government does assume a limited role and allow people to grow and allow there to be equal opportunity for all? Or are we going to start to look more like Europe? Are we going to look like those cities and countries that over a year and a half ago we saw young people go out onto the streets there protesting against their government's attempt to rein in their retirement benefits just as these young people were even entering the workforce. So they're actually worried about their retirement benefits long before they would even receive them. Again, that's, to me, indicative of countries in which it has been ingrained in the minds of vital young people that they need to rely on government. That's not who we are.
Good point. We don't even know what liberty means anymore for too many. Last question for you. Tim Geithner just yesterday said that it will be catastrophic if we don't raise the debt ceiling. Your thoughts on that? How's the Republican Party going to move forward?
Look, the vote around the debt ceiling has a direct correspondence to fiscal mismanagement in the past in Washington. It's about cleaning up spilt milk. But what we owe to the people that elect us is to make sure that the milk doesn't spill again, that we don't let the spending get out of control again. And I was at the White House with Tim Geithner and the president last week, Speaker Boehner and I told him and told the president that we're not going to go along with the debt limit increase unless there are controls in place to make sure that spending doesn't get out of control again.
So what are you going to do? Hold out until that happens, or what?
Well, we're working to try and put into place mechanisms that will make sure that the federal government cannot spend money the way it's been spending in the past. I mean, that's really, we're looking at discretionary caps, looking at sort of forcing Washington to actually cut more spending, forcing Washington to pay down debt. I mean, this is the kind of forced discipline that small businesses, families across America have been doing for a decade now. Washington's got to get in the game and start doing what everybody else has, which is to start tightening its belt.
Awesome. Eric Cantor, Congressman, the majority leader of the House of Representatives. Appreciate your time. I hope you have a wonderful day at Qualcomm, and your time in San Diego is just wonderful.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work. We appreciate you.